So I'm currently in Brazil. I wanted to go quite raw with this, no fancy editing or anything like that. Just been, thinking for. I've been here for about a week and a half now, staying out here for a month on my own, and yeah, just been thinking quite a lot. If anybody anybody who knows me will know that I'm quite passionate about additional languages, especially being a British person. It's something that is not quite common, not very heard of. So yeah, I just wanted to put some thoughts together. As I said, just keep it fairly raw. Also, if you don't have some sort of second brain or notepad, no, I definitely recommend one. For example, my notes for this are just as I was eating breakfast in a cafe this morning down the road. I was just jotting down some notes. And this is just such a beautiful thing, such a such an amazing thing to have. Because a lot of people use their phone, which you can do, but I don't know, just having this in your pocket, like it's pocket sized, 24/7. It's just like a constant reminder that anytime I think of something or that I need to do something, I've got this in my pocket to make a note of it. So it could be something that I wanted to remember, something that I need to do, maybe somebody said something that I liked. Literally everything goes in these books. Also, there's a book called what's it called? There's a book about having a second brain. If you Google second brain, it will certainly come up. But yeah, that book explains it amazingly about how to do it, like having somewhere to store your notes on the go. So whether it be that on your phone in a little notebook like this, and then obviously like say at the end of the day, at the end of the week, compressing it into like an actual knowledge base, like a searchable knowledge base, so that in the future you can then go back. Like say if you thought of something, and a lot of the time you think, oh, I just can't remember what it was, but now with this sort of stuff, you think of it and you say, okay, I know I made a note of it. I can then go and search it. Also, I've just seen my eye; it looks really bad. I've currently got an eye infection at the minute, being carnival in Brazil. I suppose it's quite inevitable that I was going to get something like this. But the beautiful thing about Brazil is private healthcare over here is pretty fucking good, and for a Brit, it's also quite cheap. Anyway, second languages, additional languages. I'm obviously British, and being British usually means that you only speak English, especially if your family is British, or American, Australian, anything like that. I don't want to shit on my own doorstep or anything, but we are quite arrogant in the fact that we don't need to learn any additional languages. Obviously, languages aren't the easiest to learn, um, but yeah, I feel like straight off the bat, British people that are native in English, they don't have a second, third language. So why should you be learning another language? I've thought about this quite a lot, and I've also persuaded quite a few friends to attempt to learn a second language because it's something I'm quite passionate about. Because I've seen so many benefits from it, and like I truly believe that anybody can see all these benefits from it. I suppose the main one, especially as I said, being British, we don't speak any languages. It's just that it sets you apart. It sets you apart so much in like every aspect of life, especially if you're comparing yourselves to other people in your country. So, for example, I can think of two main ways to split this, on a work level and on a personal level. On a work level, imagine you're going for a job, you've got, other people that you're going against, they all have the exact same qualifications as you or similar qualifications. There's not really too much that's going to be setting you apart. Maybe things like personality, maybe you've got extra experience, stuff like that. But I can guarantee you, if you have something to talk about, like going through the efforts of learning a second language or being able to learn or speak a second language, this is going to massively set you apart. Oh my god. I cannot make this up. Like, you can literally see how interested people get when you start talking to them about being able to speak a second language or a third language, whatever it is, especially if they are also, say, British American, whatever. You can, everybody romanticizes the idea of, speaking a second language, but nobody actually really goes ahead and does it, in these English speaking countries. And it just sets you apart so much. So as I said, in like a work environment, if you're physically, applying for a job, or maybe you're in a job already, this is setting you apart from everybody else already. Even the fact of, like, you might not even be fluent, you might just be, proficient in it. It's already setting you apart. One, the fact that you can speak about being able to learn a second language, but also, you can also speak to people in that language now. So say if, your company has customers in a different, in the language that you've learned, say German, Spanish, whatever, already, you're, ahead of these other people that will be going against it. And also, say for example, you are British like me, you're applying for a British company, and they, it'd be advantageous if the person speaks German. You might be against German people living in England, but I think if you're an English person who can speak German, you've got an advantage over somebody who is German that lives in English, because you're already British, it's a British company, you're already way different because you speak the language that barely any British people are going to speak. I think it sets you apart way more. So yeah, in a work perspective, it's going to set you apart way more. And also, one thing that I've seen is that it just makes you way more fucking interesting. Like, for example, when I'm speaking to customers or I'm speaking to colleagues, whatever, I'll tell them, I'm going to Brazil next week, and they'll be like, why are you going to Brazil? And then I'll say, I can speak Portuguese, and all of a sudden you can just see them like switch on. And then you start telling them, how you learned the language, why you learned the language, the benefits of learning the language, and all of a sudden people get like really interested. And I always tell them, like, like if you're interested in learning another language, like, give me a number, I'll send you a message on some of the stuff I used to learn, etc. Literally every single time I say this, the person is interested in learning. Whether they actually go ahead and do anything, that's a different story. But it's just like building that relationship, and it gives you something interesting to talk about. Like it gives the person something to remember you by. So you're the person who learned a second language or speaks whatever language it is. Also, as I say, it just makes you way more fucking interesting. And also in a personal level, so obviously being able to build those relationships on a personal level, I feel like having a second language or being able to talk to the second language is already making you more recognizable, but also, as I say, you're just building relationships with people. I think, in my opinion, the best thing that I've seen from learning a second language on a personal level is when it comes to dating. Like, oh my god. Like, for example, me. I am probably like a very, very average British man. Like, there's not really too much that sets me apart, in terms of like straight off the bat. Like, obviously I understand when you get to like deeper levels and you start to get to know people better, then obviously there's lots of things that sets you apart. But on like a very, very surface level, when you're dating, because that's what matters, when you're like online and you're meeting new people, and everything is very, very surface level before you start getting to the the deeper levels. There's not really too much that sets you apart. Obviously, looks is a big one, but apart from that, it's not really too much. Being able to speak a second language set me apart way, way more than before I learned a second language. I remember trying to date before I learned a second language, and honestly, it was so difficult. Like, these girls have, so many people that that are giving them attention. You're just like the same as everybody else. Like, you have to be really creative in what you're saying, all this sort of stuff. When I learned a second language, honestly, it completely changed everything. To put into perspective, obviously, my interest is more in Brazil than, say, like Portugal or any countries in Africa that speak Portuguese. But being able to speak Portuguese, it just completely opened up all those countries for me. So dating in the UK, there's quite a lot of Brazilians in the UK, and being able to speak Portuguese, it just completely opened up everything in terms of people in those nationalities. So obviously in London, there's quite a lot of Brazilians. On dating sites, I'd put obviously, in the languages, there's like an area for languages, and you obviously put the language that you speak for me, which is Portuguese. And instantly, I started getting Brazilian people matching me, people from Portugal matching me, and they just want to know, why the hell does a British person speak Portuguese? And all of a sudden they get like really, really interested. Or for example, when I send a like to somebody, and I can see that they're Brazilian, like sometimes it's quite obvious, sometimes it's not. But if it is, in terms of your pickup line, you can do it in Portuguese. It could be something really simple, but it could be something related to obviously their profile, whatever. And all of a sudden they're going to be like, this guy's obviously British. So they're subconsciously thinking, okay, this guy's British. Why can he speak Portuguese? So all of a sudden, like, you're being differentiated. You look way more interesting than everybody else. And it just like helped me so much more in differentiating myself. Being able to get out on dates pretty fast. And then obviously when you're on the dates, being able to speak both English and Portuguese, you'll find that, from a dating perspective in England, you'll come across people who their English is not very good, so being able to speak their language to them on a date, it just like sets me apart massively. And there's just so many benefits to being able to speak it, having that language as your second language, because obviously, for example, the British accent, quite a lot of people romanticize it, or quite a lot of people like the British accent. Being able to switch between the two, massive game changer, honestly. So I think learning a second language just sets you apart way, way more than before I had anything. I was just the same as everybody else. I think the third one, outside of, working, setting yourself apart personally and on a work level, is travel. It's pretty fucking obvious. It's probably the one that you think of first. One, travel becomes safer, because the countries that you're going to, or the country that you're going to, for example, if you can speak the language, you can get yourself out of difficult situations a lot easier because you speak the language. You can understand what people are saying when they're speaking close to you. So say if somebody's talking about you, because chances are you're going to look like a foreigner, you're going to look like a gringo. So if people are speaking about you, you can start to identify, dangerous situations, etc. way sooner. It also becomes cheaper. I've found that, in some places, for example, in South America, they will see that you are a foreigner. So obviously you'll essentially get special pricing for being a foreigner. And that's just normal. Like, you just have to come to grips with that, basically. But obviously, the more experience you have with the country, you can identify where you're receiving special prices. And obviously, if you have a very good proficiency in the language, you can start to look less foreign, but also you can start to negotiate with these people and being like, am I just getting a special price because I'm a foreigner, like I'm not going to pay that, etc. And when you don't speak the language, doing those sorts of things are a lot harder. I also feel like solo traveling, if that's something you're into, is just so much way easier when you speak another language, because chances are unless you're staying in hostels, you're not really going to meet people that speak English or your language. For example, in Brazil, where I'm right now, I believe it's either 5 or 6% of people here speak English. So obviously not very much. Like, I don't think I've spoken English at all since I've been here, and same with the last time I came here. Didn't speak any English whatsoever, just speaking Portuguese. So obviously if you're traveling solo, like, being able to speak the language just opens it up way more. And I won't go into too much about how to learn the language, but one thing I've noticed is when I'm solo traveling, in terms of getting more proficient and more fluent, when you're solo traveling, is perfect, because you're in a situation where you kind of have to go and speak to people. And the amazing thing about being a foreigner is you can just be like as stupid as you want, and it's just such a great excuse to speak to people. and this is another benefit, is it makes you more of a people person when you can speak another language. So, as I was saying, I'm in a foreign country right now. I can be as stupid as I want. Obviously, it's good to, you know, be smart in a different country. You need to be smart. You don't want to be in difficult situations. But what I mean by being stupid is anywhere you go, you can just be curious and ask questions about the stuff that you're seeing. Like, for example, in a supermarket, in a queue, like to pay, I might see that somebody is buying something, and just to spark a conversation with them, I'll ask them, "What is that?" Like, it's obvious that I'm a foreigner. Like, obviously, my accent is not, completely crystal clear. I could, at the start of it say that, I'm a foreigner, I'm learning Portuguese or whatever, I've never seen this before. But just the ability to be as curious and as stupid as you want makes it so much more easy to cold approach people, to meet new people, this sort of stuff. So as I say, supermarket, so fucking easy. It could be out and about. It could be something as simple as, I heard this word earlier, I'm learning Portuguese. Could you tell me what it means? For example, like, you could be as stupid and as curious as you want in these countries. Obviously, you need to be careful who you're speaking to, because you don't want to be taken advantage of. Like, say, if somebody sees that you're a blatant foreigner and maybe they don't look very safe, I probably wouldn't be going and being stupid and curious around them. But say, for example, in the supermarket scenario, there's usually pretty low risk, showing, vulnerabilities such as not knowing stuff. It's just such a great way to meet people, and it's also the same in your own country. Like, the ability to be vulnerable in the perspective of being curious is just such a great way to open up to people and meet new people, and it's also such a great excuse to meet new people. I see it quite a lot in terms of like dating advice, etc. Is just like being curious. It's the same when you're learning a language. There's so much to be curious about, because you haven't just got the language, you've also got the culture of the countries that speak the language. So there's so much that you can be curious about, even in your own country. If you see people who blatantly aren't from your country, say if I see Brazilians in London, straight away I've got something to speak about. Is I can just be curious and say, "Oh, I heard you speaking Portuguese. I'm actually learning it. I had a question, blah blah blah." Like, it's so much easier to meet people, whereas when you don't speak a second language, especially in Britain, for example, it's very, very hard to cold approach people. It's very hard to just go up to another British person and start sparking a conversation, because a lot of the time there's expectations that you want something. Whereas when you are literally purely curious, it's obvious that you're there just to learn. People are so much more receptive to it, and also a lot of the time I found that they'll really enjoy the fact that you're enjoying their culture and their language, and you want to know more about it. A lot of people really like that, because I know British people aren't the most patriotic, but you'll find that a lot of countries are, and a lot of people are very proud about their nationality, etc. So they really like when people are showing an interest in it. The fourth one that I wrote down was opening up your mind. I believe this one's quite a broad one, but one thing that anybody who's learned a second language, I think, can attest to this. But when you learn a second language, it's like you grow another personality. You have a different way of thinking, and I think it's because when you are learning a second language, especially when you're like, say, basic or intermediate, you have to find ways around saying what you want to say. In English, you already know the words, so you just blurt it straight out. Whereas when you're learning a second language, you have to pause and think. And a lot of the time, you'll say if a sentence is like this, and in English you'll just go across the words and you'll say all the sentences. If you're literally translating to what you want to say, you'll probably get to here, then you won't know this word, so you'll have to find a different word, and you might go back, or that might branch off, and you have to think of different ways to say what you want to say. And I feel like when you're doing these types of exercises, such as learning new words, new languages, it creates a whole different personality. For example, in English, I am very, very, I'm very, very laid back, I'm very relaxed, I'm very chill. Whereas in Portuguese, I feel like I'm not massively off the mark, I'm not massively off, but I'm a lot more open, I'm a lot more curious, I speak to people a lot more easily, I cold approach people a lot more easily. I feel like I'm a lot more transparent when I'm speaking the language. And I feel that could be for numerous different reasons, but at the end of the day, it's like a different personality to what I am in when I'm in English. And I've heard other people say this, like say if they speak like 3 or 4 different languages, a lot of the time they'll have 2, 3, 4 different personalities because of this. So it's just massively opening up the mind. And I've seen numerous studies as well about how people who are able to speak multiple languages generally have a higher IQ. And it makes complete sense. Like, say if you're learning thousands of words in one language, now you've got to learn thousands of more words in another language. Like, you're just generally like upscaling your IQ, you're becoming smarter, more intellectual. And it's also just, yeah, as I say, I think the best way to say it is just open up the mind. You're becoming a more broader person. Yeah, I think I've got more personalities on my list. Spoke about that. Solo travel, meeting new people. Spoke about that. Learning new cultures. Before that, I got always learning routine. So, for me, routine has always been really, really important. Really important. Like, I've always liked having things that I can shape my day around. For example, when I'd have a girlfriend, I would shape my routine around my girlfriend, like having those constants that you can shape your routine around. Obviously, when you're single, you have to, for me at least, I've had to find things to shape my routine around. So say if I know every single day at this time I have to do this, then you can shape the rest of the routine around it. And for me, learning a language or learning anything is just something that you have to do every single day. So you set a time for it every single day. It doesn't have to be the same every day, but you set a time for it. You add it into your calendar, your daily routine, and having those things, for me, improves the rest of my day. Like, makes it a lot more structured. And I understand that not everybody is a routine person, so this isn't for everybody. But for me, having that routine is just a massive benefit, and being able to put something like half an hour to an hour of learning a language or learning something about the country that I'm interested in, etc. It's just a massive benefit. And I suppose the spin-off is that maybe you're not into routines, but everybody I believe should always be learning. It doesn't matter how old you are. You could be 5, you could be fucking 80. Like, it really does not matter. I personally believe that everybody should be learning something always, and a language is like the perfect thing to learn. Like, it's something that you can't just learn in one day. You have to keep on doing that, going at it. It's just like perseverance to the max. Like, it's like anything, like going to the gym, learning a new skill. Like, you just have to keep nailing it. You just have to keep doing it every single day. You can't keep having breaks, otherwise you're just not going to get there. And I believe these types of things are just so important in life. And having one thing such as one language is just, it's just so, like, I believe it's just so healthy. It's just such a positive, such a strong thing to have in your life. And it's just like, if I was to say what the perfect thing was, it would probably be either like the gym or learning a second language or learning a skill like the piano or something. And these are just like the perfect things to learn because, as I say, they don't happen straight away. You have to keep on at it. It helps with your resilience. And at the end of the day, once you actually get to a point where you're starting to get really comfortable with it, there's just so many benefits to it. So many benefits. As I said, the next one was learning new cultures. When I was learning early on, I started with Spanish. But as I was learning Spanish, I was obviously curious in how to learn a language, so I wanted to learn how to learn a language, like the best ways to learn a language. And one of the things that I saw quite a lot of people saying is that you have to have an interest in the countries that speak the language. You have to be interested in the people, the culture, the food, the climate, the country itself, like what the weather's like, what the beaches are like, whether it's a warm place, a cold place, what the people are like there, just everything. I learned, or I saw, or I was taught early on that you have to be interested in these things. As I was learning Spanish, I didn't know much about Latin America. I didn't know much about Hispanics or anything like this. And Spain for me just wasn't really ringing the bells. I was just kind of doing it because I wanted to learn another language. And I think you can do that, just learn a language because you want to learn. But I think it's going to be so much harder to stick at it. There's going to be days where like you just can't be asked to do the revision. You can't be asked to put in the work. And a lot of the time you won't be seeing the benefits of it. Whereas if you're actually genuinely interested, it just makes it way more easier in putting in the time because you're going to be learning something you're interested in. So it might happen naturally. A lot of the time you might not even have to set time to do revision. A lot of the time you'll just be like, say listening to the music of the country, for example, because you're genuinely interested in it. But as you're doing this, you're learning the language. So as I say, learning the cultures is very, very important in physically learning the language, but it's also a benefit of learning the language is that you're most likely going to be learning about the culture of the language. I think that's a great way to learn the language as well. So physically using the language to learn about the country. So say if you're interested in Colombia, for example, and you're learning Spanish, physically learning more about Colombia is going to be a great way to learn the language. And I'm a big believer in that. So that by the time you're ready to travel to the country, or when you're there, you already know stuff about the country. You already know things that you need to be looking out for. And as I said earlier, with like the whole dating perspective, you've already got the interest. So when it comes to meeting new people, it becomes way easier because you've already got stuff to relate on. You've already got stuff that you're curious and interested in. It just makes it way, way more easier. Way, way easier. The next one I've got is being more interesting. This for me was a big benefit. As I said before, there was not really too much to set me apart. Whereas now I have something to speak about. I have a language to speak about, but also a country to speak about. Like I can speak about the times that I come to Brazil. I can speak about learning the language. I can speak about how hard it was. I can speak about the differences between the languages. I can speak about the people that speak the language. There's so much that I can speak about now that I'm genuinely a more interesting person because I have all this stuff to speak about. And that's not to say that having stuff to speak about makes you interesting. I know that's not the case at all, but that's just one half of it. Being able to actually speak about stuff, I believe, is half of what makes you interesting. Having an actual personality, having stuff that people can remember you by. I believe the other half is, as I said, just being interested. Now you've probably heard that a million times. I know I have. Being interesting is just being interested in people. As I was saying earlier, being curious, learning a different language is such a great excuse. Like even if you're speaking in English, when I'm speaking to my clients, for example, at work, having a different language is something that opens the conversation, but then it opens, as I say, it's opened the conversation, so it's now opened the fact that I can now be curious again. I don't have to do it in Portuguese, I can do it in English, but because I've already got something to speak about, I can now be curious. I can be asking them about if they speak a different language. If they want to speak a different language, what language would they speak? What countries are they interested in? Have they thought about it? What have they tried before? What did they do before? Why didn't they continue? Etc. etc. You get the whole point. But it's just, as I say, something to speak about and something that makes you way different to everybody else, especially as a British person or as anybody else that speaks English as their native. It gives you something way sets you apart way more. In my opinion, makes you way more interesting. And that's not to say you have to speak a language to be interesting, but if you don't really have much that sets you apart and you don't believe you're a very interesting person, learning a second language will definitely set you apart, 100%. I've got two more. The next one was helping people. So one thing that I see quite often, and with Portuguese it's probably not going to happen too much, but say if you're learning Spanish, you will see this all the time, because there's so many countries that speak Spanish. I speak Portuguese, and I only really encounter like Brazilians and the odd person from Portugal, but it still happens all the time to me, especially if you're in a big city like London, or if you're in any city. You will see it so often. is you'll see people, either tourists or people, you know, either tourists or people that live in the country, who aren't speaking English, and you'll hear, once you start to learn, you'll hear that they're speaking, say, Spanish, Portuguese, whatever you're learning, you'll start to subconsciously hear that they're speaking that language. Now, it may take a bit of time to get to that level where you can identify what language they're speaking subconsciously. Like in English, we recognize and we can subconsciously start to hear English. And a lot of the time, if they are a tourist, a lot of the time they might be needing help. So say, I'll give you an example. Before I came to Brazil, I was at my local train station, and there was a woman who was talking to the guy at the kiosk to try and get a train ticket. She obviously didn't have Trainline or anything like that, like an app. She was obviously just trying to get one in person, but her English was not very good. And the guy was trying to tell her where she needed to go, which platform she needed to get on, but she just did not understand at all what was going on. So the fact that I could see, like she was speaking broken English, but I could tell by her accent that she was Brazilian, speaking English. So the fact that I could go over there and in Portuguese ask, "Do you need help?" Instantly you can see they're just like way more relaxed. Oh, thank God. Like somebody who can actually help us, like somebody who can sit in the middle and help. And like this has happened numerous times to me. For example, at Euston, somebody not knowing which platform they need to get on, or how the platforms even work, how they know which one they need to go to, like when it'll be called, etc. Like this has happened to me so many times at train stations where I've met people like Brazilians, etc., who just because they're tourists or whatever, they're not too sure on what they need to do, and being able to go up to somebody and say, "Oh, do you need help?" and then being able to offer help to them, it just makes it, one, it builds relationships. Like there's people that I still know to this day that I helped, built a relationship with them. But two, you just become a people person. Like you become way more of a people person because you're going out of your way helping people. You're becoming a lot more comfortable speaking to different people, to strangers. So yeah, a massive spin-off. And also, I'm going to be honest, there's nothing as cool or that makes you feel like really good about yourself as surprising people that you speak the language. Oh my God, it is the best feeling ever. When, for example, you see somebody needs help and you can go over to them and say, "Do you want help?" in their language. Oh my God. Like the joy you can see in them, they're like, "Oh my God, this British guy can speak Portuguese." Or for example, I've had it where like, I think I was once in an acai shop in London, and there was two women behind the kiosk thing, like making acai. And I heard that they started speaking about me. Thankfully, it wasn't anything bad. But being able to then, as I go and actually pick up my acai, speak to them in their language, like it's so fucking funny. Like being able to see how shocked they are. Like, obviously, this is a pretty bad scenario because they felt a little bit embarrassed. But being able to go up to people and say, "Oh, I heard you say this," or in their language, they're like, "Oh, I heard you were speaking English. Your English is so good." Like, as I say, it makes you so much more of a people person because you now have that thing that allows you to speak to people, and take from that what you will, whether your intentions are to try and find somebody to date, or whether your intentions are just to meet new people, make interactions, build relationships, whatever the reason is that you would want to do something like that. It just opens up those options, whereas when you just speak English, you don't have those options. So yeah, the benefits of learning a second language as somebody, as a British person, as an American person, Australian, anywhere else that's the native is English, like it's just so powerful. I tell everybody I meet that they should be learning a second language. Something that I've seen so many benefits from, and I'm so grateful for the opportunities, like the people that gave me the opportunities to learn a second language, and the people that supported me. Like it's helped me so much. Like it's ridiculous. Nothing in my life compares to it. Like I've put in a lot of effort in different areas of my life, And learning a second language has been the thing that I've seen the most benefits from by a country fucking mile. Like, it's not even close. Like, for example, in my career, I've been doing it for like 7 years, but nothing even compares to being able to learn a second language. Like, it's just day and night. Like, it really is so important for me. Like, it's opened up so many doors for me. Like, when I have a child, hopefully I have a child, I will be encouraging them from the bat to be able to speak more than one language. When they're coming to me asking for advice or whatever, it will be, you need to speak 2 languages, you need to be able to speak 3 languages. Like, I'll be pushing my child through, because I see, like, through to learn more than one language. One, because as a child, it's just, you don't have to put in as much time to learn a language. And 2, I know the benefits. I know if I have a child, I want them to have as many benefits as possible. And being able to speak more than one language it's like the most beneficial thing that I can think of right now. So yeah, I encourage everybody, my friends, my family, anybody that I meet, to learn a second language. And I always try and help them, with how I learned a second language. I always try and keep them accountable as well, because, as I say, the people that I care about, like, I obviously want them to be able to have these benefits as well. And you can do the same. You can support the people around you after you've learnt a second language, and you've seen how many benefits and how many benefits it has. You can start to support the people around you in having something so amazing as well. So yeah, as I say, I just made some notes earlier while I was in a cafe, and this is like a really important topic for me, and I see so many benefits from it. So I wanted to share some of those thoughts. So yeah, learn a second language, get a fucking notebook, or start using your phone or something to start making notes. And I might do another just sit down raw version of how to actually learn a second language, or how to start learning a second language, because I feel like there's so many resources out there, but a lot of them are just going to waste your time. Like, a lot of them I just didn't see many benefits from. So yeah, maybe I'll do a video on the stuff that I used, or the stuff that you can just ignore. Because there is a lot of stuff when it comes to learning a second language that's just going to waste your time.